Na mô tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Na mô tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Na mô tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ dhammāṃ saṅghāṃ namasāmi. Blessings, good evening. When we have a bhikkhu upasampada or samanera papaja, ordination ceremony for a new monk or a new novice monk in the monastery, always brings us back to consider why we become monks and novice monks, what the purpose of it is, why we're here. And the simple answer is for the end of suffering, to bring suffering to its end, to realize Nibbana, to realize the Four Noble Truths. It also brings us to many practical reflections on why would people come to live in a monastery, shave their heads, put on the robes, have no income, live very simply in the forest with a very high level of discipline and committing themselves to the practice of Dharma and Vinaya. And everyone in the world, you could say, doesn't want to suffer. That's pretty universal. But some people would say coming to live in the monastic form is going to increase your suffering because of the level of renunciation, nekama, parami, that's required. But maybe that's suffering for the end of suffering. The first noble truth is there is suffering. And suffering is to be known. That's the Buddha's instruction. But the kind of suffering you encounter in the monastery is largely the suffering of the mind. There's a bit of hardship, endurance required because of the simplicity of the life. And you do a lot of sitting. Maybe you get the suffering of painful knees and legs, and you only eat one meal a day, so suffering of hunger sometimes for short periods, and so on. But that kind of physical suffering is fairly minor and very short-lived. But the more common and more that impactful kind of suffering in the monastery and the monastic life is the mental suffering of not getting what you want. Because renunciation means that you're so used to getting what you want in the lay life and seeking what you want and also getting away from what you don't want, that when you come into the monastery and you can't always follow desire in the same way as you're used to as a layperson, you have this mental suffering, discomfort of maybe there's something you want but you can't get it because you have no money, or you're living in a little hut in the forest or a room in the forest and there's no means to follow every desire in the way you've been used to. So what happens to those desires? Well, they come up and they kind of niggle you. So there's a lot of that kind of suffering, niggling, grumbling, complaining kind of suffering, not getting what you want or being with what you don't want. Maybe having to get up in the early morning to do meditation and chanting and doing things at different times, following the routines and the ways of the monastery, but that may not be in line with what you personally want to do. So you have to have a lot of patience when you come into a monastery, for however long or short a period of time you're in the monastery. But the idea is you're learning about the First Noble Truth. But it doesn't just stop there, or you just got to be with suffering. And then the next thing is you're learning, well, where does it come from? Craving, and that's a mental thing. That's something that comes up, that you manufacture in your mind. And that's why there's the opportunity for the Third Noble Truth, Nirodha, to practice for the cessation of craving in this very life, in this very monastery, in this very moment. You can practice the Third Noble Truth. And hopefully that will be the reward or the good result of the renunciation and the commitment to the practice. But sometimes it's quicker to arrive and sometimes slower. But everything we do in the monastery is coming from this sort of starting point of renunciation. That brings up some immediate challenges because most people, say adults, are having to go out and earn a living in one way or another in the world. And a lot of our stress in the lay life is to do around work. You go to work, you have schedules and timetables and obligations and supervisors on your back and all kinds of deadlines and things that require you to work, to do things. You have obstacles that come up. Maybe you have to travel to your job and back as well as maybe having your own life, social life, family life. That brings a lot of tension, physical tension, mental stress, that we don't even realize because we're so used to it. So then when you come into the monastery, suddenly all that's gone, at least temporarily or permanently. So the first thing that usually happens is people start to think it's more like a holiday. Because if you take away that structure of going to work, earning money, timetables, supervisors, things you have to do, obligations, duties, responsibilities, you take all that away, then it's like, oh, the only thing you're used to that is without all those things is a holiday. So it's very common people come into a monastery and treat it without even realizing like a holiday. But of course, if you take on the robes, these brown robes, shave your head, keep precepts, whether it's 8 precepts, 10 precepts, 227 precepts, 311 precepts, whatever, that's not a holiday, because there's things you're obliged to do and not do, and it's a training, and we call it a training in Dharma Vinaya. So then you get, that's often the first sort of little sticking point or point of friction is, maybe you were hoping for a holiday, or just naturally you sort of start to feel like it's a holiday, but then suddenly you've got to keep rules and do things because you've taken on the life of a samana. Whether you're a novice monk or anagarika, you're a samana. An alms mendicant, you're dependent on the kindness of other people for your food, your lodgings, your basic requisites. These robes, we call them the banner of the Arahants. They come from the Buddha and they come from the Arahants in the time of the Buddha. So they are a symbol of the Buddha and the Arahants, of symbol of enlightenment. So that in itself is a sort of obligation. Once you put the robes on, well, you've got to live up to it, you've got to practice. And you're being supported by other people, you're no longer earning your own income in that sense. So it does mean you have to start fulfilling certain obligations, responsibilities, a new set, you might say, slightly different from going out to work to earn a living. But it's not a holiday, although there are some aspects of monastic life that are quite pleasant and enjoyable, and that's encouraged because we're aiming to end suffering. So there is a slight resemblance to some aspects of a holiday, but it's not really a holiday in the sense that you've got to practice. So that's something people have to get over, and sometimes they don't get over it. So they don't have such a great time, because on the one hand they want to sleep, eat and talk and do exactly what they want, but then on the other hand the monastic lifestyle doesn't fully support that. So you get friction in your mind. Desire comes up, and some desires you can fulfill, of course, the means are there, but some are inappropriate or for suffering, and you know that, so you have to let go of the desire. But before you can let go and experience the third noble truth of cessation, there's a bit of tension there, isn't there? Because desire is sticky, tricky. We're used to following desire. You can't just drop it like that. Even sometimes desire that's clearly causing you suffering. Still, your mind is sticky, stubborn. So used to identifying with desires as my desire, my want, what I feel, what I think is right. We're so used to that even when they start to cause us suffering, still not fully ready to drop them. But the monastery is a place for learning how to do that. It's a place for realizing the Four Noble Truths, for Nibbana, for the end of suffering. And so, quickly or slowly, we're learning. We're learning what suffering is, its nature, physical suffering, mental suffering. We're learning where it comes from, craving, attachment. And we're learning how to practice to end it and to experience some of the cessation of suffering that we wish for. So it's a place of learning. The official term is it's a place where we study and practice Dhamma, Dhamma Vinaya. These two aspects of what we're doing. Dhamma is the truth and the teachings of the Buddha that point to the truth and explain things, the path, how to get to truth. The Vinaya is the monastic discipline that leads out of suffering towards truth, towards freedom from suffering. They've had Dhamma and Vinaya around since before the Buddha. The Buddha didn't begin every aspect of what we call Dhamma practice or spiritual practice. And before the Buddha came along, there were other meditation teachers. They had their own code of conduct, their own precepts, their own meditation techniques and philosophies. But probably because we're here, that's a sign we have faith and belief that the Buddha's offering of Dhamma Vinaya really does lead to the end of suffering, whereas maybe some others don't, or lead only partly to the end of suffering, but not completely. Whereas we have faith in the Buddha as an enlightened, fully enlightened arahant, one who's without suffering, and so therefore we want to follow. One can still follow in the lay life, of course, but is filled with many challenges and obstacles. So when you do have time to come into the monastery, if you have the opportunity, it's maybe the best form, lifestyle, best form for this practice. But it's not the only one. But it's probably the most suitable one. Everything from, as I said, you shave your head, you put on the robes, you have an alms bowl, you live in the forest at the foot of a tree or in a hut at the foot of a tree. Once you get used to it, once you commit to it, then it's a very suitable lifestyle for coming to understand the Four Noble Truths and for learning, studying, and then practicing. Studying alone is not enough. We read, we listen to the talks, and that is essential because it's one way we gain some understanding, right view, samadhi. But of course that is all for the next part of the training, which is the practice. It's what we call pariyatti. Pariyatti is the Dhamma we receive, listening, reading from external sources. And it's essential, but pariyatti isn't an end in itself. As we know, you read the books and maybe you gain a lot of knowledge, and that can be quite useful in the long run for explaining the Dhamma to others, explaining it to yourself, but it's still the theoretical knowledge. It's not yet the actual knowledge of the end of suffering, or understanding what is suffering, what is its cause, how to let go of its cause, and so on. It's the description of that. And then we have to practice. So pariyatti is for patibhati, practice. So we learn the rules, the precepts, the 10 precepts of a novice, 227 precepts of a monk. You learn them first. You learn the words, you hear them, you read them. But then practicing is not quite the same, because there'll be times when you're not holding the book. The rule is not there in front of you, but you're in a situation where you have to keep a rule because that's what the obligation of being a novice or a monk requires. So something very simple like, at the moment it's warm, so you get flies coming in, especially at mealtime. You might have the temptation to want to swat, hurt or kill a fly. But you have the pariyatti is, you undertake the precept not to kill living beings, animals or human. The patibhati is, can you do it? Can you restrain yourself from swatting the most annoying fly, when it goes in your mouth or up your nostril or on your food? Can you restrain that desire to squash it, hit it? That's the patibhati. And we know sometimes we have the pariyatti, we have the rules, we have the ways and techniques that the Buddha gave us, practices of mindfulness, practices of reflection, wise reflection on impermanence, not self, and so on. We have the pariyatti available, but in terms of practice, it's not always at the tip of our fingers yet. That's why we call it practice or patibhati. And so as the fly lands, maybe you have an instinctive thought, get it. Maybe even move a hand, a slight movement of the hand towards it. But then if you're training, and hopefully if your training is kicking in as it were, then there's the thought, oh, I can't kill it. So then you have to maybe solve that particular problem in a different way. I mean, you can gently move your hand to sort of shoo it away or blow on it, or you move away from the fly, or you do something that doesn't kill it, but you get away from it, or maybe you just put up with it. So there's the practical application of the precept of not killing, being patient, or actually being compassionate in some way, or doing something but without killing. But then also you have the deeper level, there's the Dhamma, the Vinaya is not killing. The Dhamma is, you have an intention maybe to get rid of a fly because you don't want flies in your world. So that fly, it stimulates the intention maybe to kill it, hurt it. Especially if it's many flies, after a while you might lose your patience. You want to just thump it out of frustration. But if you are determined to keep your precept, which is what precepts require, we call it adhitthana or samatthana. Like when you take precepts in 8 precepts, 10 precepts, 227, we use the word samatthana, but you can also use the word adhitthana. So you're determined, you make your mind firm to follow a certain guideline, rule, not to go against it. So you need that firmness, especially if you're being tempted, provoked, or situation is very kind of putting pressure on you in some way, stimulating your desires, maybe negative desire in this sense, the desire to get rid of. Well, you need that determination, the commitment to the precept, the determination of mind to follow it, keep it, the mindfulness to recognize what's going on, because sometimes we break precepts just because we're unconscious. We're kind of sleepwalking and hit the fly without a second thought, or if you're a monk, pick up the unoffered food, the unoffered drink without a second thought. There's things we'll do which break our precepts, and we're not even aware we're doing it. Sometimes it's someone else who'll tell us, or we only realize later. That's one problem, but sometimes you do know what you're going, but you're under pressure from your own desire. And what do? Well, you have to have that patience, determination, clarity, mindfulness, what we call clear comprehension, sampajanya. I am a monk or a novice. This situation, I have a precept, I don't kill, so I can't kill the fly. Where are you? What's happening? You need a certain number of reflections going on to keep the precept. And then to work with the desire, internal desire. You're annoyed, you're fed up with this fly that's bugging you, but you can't kill it. What do? Well, you just watch the desire, like you watch the fly alight on your hand or your food or whatever and then fly away. You watch the desire come up, but you're not following it, so then it flies away. It just fades away because you're not indulging it. And that's a more subtle application of mindfulness, insight on the inside, internally, dealing with negative desires based in greed, anger, delusion, recognizing them as a negative desire, as a cause of suffering, not following it and consciously abandoning it. And sometimes you have to abandon a desire 100 times, over and over again, until your mind gets it, or even 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times. Some desires. But you have to work with it, don't you? That's what you're doing on the inside, the sort of private practice of mindfulness, reflection on the Dharma, on the desire, and then letting go. And then if you do let go, you experience cessation in whatever way it is, a sense of peace, relaxed awareness. And the flies may still be buzzing around, but now you've let go of the desire and it doesn't bother you, because flies are just flies, that's what they do. They're still annoying, they still require you to be patient, but the desire to hurt, kill, get rid of maybe is gone, because you've seen it for what it is and abandoned it. And then you experience nirodha, cessation of desire, cessation of suffering around flies in this case, and the desire to kill, to hurt, is gone. This is what we call pativeta, the cessation of suffering and the abandoning of mental defilements. It may not be the final cessation, it's just a momentary cessation. There'll still be plenty more opportunities to let go of the desire to kill flies or whatever it may be. But you start to get the method and understand what you're doing and why and how to do it. So we call this pariyati patibati patiweta. Studying, learning, but then putting into practice, and then experiencing the fruits, the freedom from negative mental states, all in all their forms, because there's so many, aren't there? If you did kill a fly, it would be the regret, maybe later on the regret, the annoyance with yourself for not being more mindful, feelings of guilt, feelings of shame, regret, or maybe just hard stubbornness, I don't care, flies should be killed, whatever. You may justify it in your own way. But actually, if you manage to keep the Vinaya, the training, and you're mindful and you're reflected, well, you're free from that kind of thinking now. You keep doing that, well, one day no further intention to kill flies or anything else will arise, whatever the situation. Your mind will be completely purified of that particular negative intention. This is how the practice of Dharma and Vinaya, or pariyati, patibati, patiweta works. Often we start with the small things. So there's lots of small rules you learn about. The way to wear your robes, and the way to clean your bowl and look after your bowl, and the way to eat mindfully, the way to speak with other people, what to say, what not to say. There's a lot of minor rules we have to learn about time and place and attitude, and physically how we're deporting ourselves, mentally what we're doing. There's not many rules about your mental attitude. That tends to be private on the inside. There's a few, because intention matters, doesn't it? But most of the rules are to do with speech and action, training to be restrained, mindful, modest, non-aggressive, not wasteful, not hurtful, and so on. There's various themes that we are learning as we keep these rules. But you start with the small ones because they're doable. But at the same time, you're also learning how to start eradicating the intentions that might lead you to break the more serious rules, like kill a person, or steal, or commit a sexual act, or to lie about your attainments or lack of attainment, but to lie about them, to make false claims. These are the four things that disqualify you from being a monk, and even as a novice monk, you'd still have to leave the robes. Where do those more serious breaches of the Vinaya, the monastic discipline, come from? Well, they all start as small things, don't they? Small moments of anger, small moments of lust or greed, small moments of delusion. So a lot of the practice is just dealing with those small moments so that they don't manifest or get bigger. It's the principle, like in Australia, you put out the little fire so you don't end up with a big bushfire, which is much more destructive. They have a word for this, they call samana sanya. When you come into the monastery, shave your head, put on robes, keep precepts. You're developing samana sanya, the perception of being a samana, one who is in training, peaceful, renouncing the world, renouncing the normal ways of the world, accumulating wealth, fame, fortune, pleasures. Now you're one aiming for the higher happiness, superior happiness of Nibbana. But that's something you have to keep bringing up, because the sanya, the perception of being a layperson, will keep getting in the way. Because if you've been a layperson for many years and then suddenly you shave your head and put on the robes, well, you may have the outward appearance of a samana, which is a start, which is a good help, but inwardly you may have the mind of a layperson. Maybe a layperson who kills flies. Samanas don't kill flies, but lay people who maybe don't have such refined sila might kill flies, and so on. This is what we're learning, how to change the way we're thinking by being more mindful, more restrained, more reflective, to be the mind of a samana. And it's not easy. It can bring up friction and kind of conflict, internal conflict, because there's something you want to do that you've always done or you're habituated to, but now you can't. And you have to do what the Buddha says, or what the Dharma says, or what the Sangha says, or what all three say, rather than just what your own preferences say. But if you can see sort of the big picture or the broader picture, this is helping us to let go of the causes of suffering. And you can use that, you say you follow the monastic routine, what we call the core what, the ways of practice, the routines, the training rules, the ways of doing something in the monastery. You may say, oh, this is not how I do it, this is not what I'm used to, this is not what I want to do. Well, true, it won't be, but it's coming from the Buddha and the Arahants, so it's coming from a good place. What it's helping you to do is bring out many good qualities in you so that you can give up to the training, rather than always giving up to your preferences, following your ego, your sense of self. Now you give up to the Dharma and the Vinaya and the way of training. And that can pull out many good qualities in you, the renunciation, the energy, the effort, the mindfulness, the kindness and compassion, the restraint, sense restraint. All the good qualities that help us are pulled out by giving up to the practice. There's another one of those little areas where the kind of previous way of thinking we might be used to will be different from the way of a samana, the way of a monastic. And the way of the monastic is not always trying to achieve things and get things. Even though sometimes we say we're here to attain nibbana, we're not actually here to get things as such. We're here more to let go of craving and attachment. Unfortunately, out in the world, we get caught up into the mind of always wanting to get things. Get the job, get the wages, get the promotion, get on, get more wealth, find the person, get the new thing, the new product, the new this, the new that. The way of the world tends to be one of accumulation always, and achieving, getting. Whereas in the monastery it's more shedding that, letting go, and establishing the mindfulness, the clarity, so that you can do that. But it will bring up some tension again. And you hear this, people say, when can I get samadhi? When will I be a good meditator? When will I have some knowledge? I don't understand the Dhamma or the suttas. When will I get this? When will I get that? That's our previous habits coming up, the mind of wanting to get things, have things, be something, be somebody. So you have to watch out for that, and you have to be patient with yourself, but also identify this is a big cause of suffering. If you're in the monastery for a few weeks, almost certainly you have the thought, my meditation is no good. And that usually will lead on to, I am not a good meditator, hardening. You may have one meditation where you feel you're not very peaceful or you didn't try very hard, okay. But then that might lead on to the, I am not a good meditator, or I'm not a good Buddhist, or I've got no merit, no barami, no good qualities. And it can harden. And then you're suffering, aren't you? Part of that is because you've brought in the attitude of I've got to be something, get something, have something. Really, every meditation is a good meditation. But what makes it really good is learning to let go, see and let go. And if you're very unpeaceful in a meditation, well, that's plenty of food for thought, isn't it? Food for contemplation, food for letting go. Sometimes we let go simply by being patient with a lot of distracted mind states. or sleepiness, or boredom, or restlessness, whatever it is. If we could all sit down and meditate and enter blissful states of one-pointed samadhi, then we wouldn't need to be here. We'd be floating around in a Brahma realm. The whole point is we're here to learn, and then to practice, and then to let go. And our best teacher that will help us do that is suffering. So if you're sitting meditating, not peaceful, painful legs, restless states of mind, doubting, why am I doing this anyway? This is all stuff you can learn from. This may be the very place you get enlightened. Facing that, learning from it. Because it's the first noble truth, isn't it? The Buddha didn't teach meditate and just be blissful. The Buddha taught the first noble truth of dukkha is to be known, which means sometimes we have to watch dukkha, learn about dukkha, be with dukkha, accept that. But then it's not an end in itself. The point is so you can see, well, where's it coming from? The craving, the attachment, and see how to let go. And that's the fourth noble truth, path of practice. It's developing the qualities that allow you to let go, rather than to cling on to things, to let go. Sometimes with renunciation, sometimes just with sharpness of mindfulness, sometimes with a wise reflection, understanding impermanence. Impermanence is just the way things are. Things arise and pass away according to causes and conditions. If you can see that, well, it helps you to let go of the desire for everything to be permanent and under your control and to belong to you. And what's impermanent doesn't belong to you. When you can see that, you can be peaceful. If you can see your painful leg doesn't belong to you, it's there, it's painful, but it's just a sensation. It's just a feeling. It's not a self, it's not a person. It's not like a personal failure if you have a painful leg, it's just the way things are. It's just a feeling that arises for human beings sitting on the ground maybe. A restless mind is not a personal failure that you have to feel bad about. It's just a condition, a mental state. It will have its different causes, making different thoughts and ideas bubbling up. Your job is to identify that as, oh, this is dukkha. But dukkha is not self. It's just a feeling, mental feeling, subtle mental feeling, very strong physical feeling sometimes, but it's just a feeling. Painful, unpleasant, not peaceful. But what the feelings do, they just arise and pass away because they're impermanent. And they're not a person, a being, a self. They're just a state of mind, or just a physical feeling, or just a mental feeling, an emotion. They just arise and pass away. That's how a samana treats them, with clarity, with mindfulness, with insight. The way of the world is, oh, I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling down, and then leads on to other things, doesn't it? We feel depressed, so then we have to do something because we're feeling depressed. Go and see the doctor, or get drunk, or go and do something to try and escape from our feeling, but we don't really learn from it. We're not treating it like a noble truth. In the monastery, as a samana, you can. So the proper letting go, or the true letting go, comes when mindfulness is established and we see things as they are. Not necessarily getting rid of or acquiring, but just knowing, oh, it's like this. As Luang Por Chah used to say, you're sitting and your mind is not peaceful, or you're walking meditation, your mind is not peaceful, but that's what you know. Oh, the mind that is not peaceful is like this. You don't have to judge yourself or make a big story out of it. You just go, oh, When it's not peaceful, it's like this. If you really know that, your mind will start to let go. But what we usually do, we jump to a new kind of view and we say, oh, mind is not peaceful, therefore I am no good. I'm a bad monk, or I'm a bad meditator, or I've got no merit. If we make it worse, we're no longer with noble truth, we're now with craving and attachment. So if you can see the monastery as a place for learning and then practicing and then letting go, you're getting nearer to the purpose of the life, what the Buddha was pointing to, why he set it up, as it were, why he established a Vinaya, a monastic order. It's to help us to let go of suffering. So I'll leave you with these reflections tonight.